Chapter 28. Matt dozed for about an hour before movement woke him. He opened his eyes to find Alex blinking and frowning, as if not sure of where she was. Lifting his head, he watched her a moment. "How do you feel?" he asked, his arm still across her stomach. "When did you get here?" She frowned, still looking disoriented. "Not long ago." "How are you feeling?" He wasn't going to let her dodge the question. She blinked a couple more times as if her brain was sluggish. "I'm starving and I need to pee." She started to get out of bed. Pain shot through Matt's side. "Hold on." He tightened the arm around her belly, keeping her from going anywhere. "What's the last thing you remember?" She scowled at him. "Hunting for the bear with Steve." "Do you remember finding the bear?" The lines in her forehead deepened as she thought about it. "Oh shit. We fought and I was hurt. That's why you're here." The knowledge seemed to hit her all at once. JV said it was bad, but why don't I hurt? She threw the blankets off and bent to look at her wound. Matt flinched and sucked air through his teeth as fire lanced through his ribs. "How long was I out?" she asked, falling back against the pillow as she lay still. The pain in his side faded some. "I'm not sure exactly, but I think you've been out about 12 hours. And you're not hurting because I'm absorbing it for you." Alex looked startled. "What do you mean you're absorbing it? You're taking my pain?" "Pretty much." She looked at him for several seconds. "Do you feel it? Like I did?" "I feel it, but not as bad. It's more that I'm feeling a fraction of it. It's a dull ache most of the time, but when you move, it gets worse, just like it would for you." She frowned, narrowing her eyes. "I don't know if I like that." "You don't have much choice. Right now, we're gonna get you out of bed and into the bathroom, then you're going to eat. You need energy to heal, and you've got to eat to get that energy." She gave him an unhappy look. "Come on, let's get you up. Fair warning, though you've probably already figured it out. All I'm wearing is my shorts." "I don't think I'm wearing even that much." "You're not." He helped her out of bed and into the attached bathroom. Glancing at the door, he looked back at her. "If I leave the room, you'll be hurting again. The door is too far away for me to keep absorbing your pain." She looked at the door, then at him. "How far away can you be and have it still work?" 2-3 feet maximum." He watched her. "It's up to you. I can leave and let you pee alone, but be prepared for it all to come back while I'm gone." She looked at him, then at the door, then at him again. She closed her eyes and made up her mind. "Go ahead. I can't pee in front of you, not yet." He understood. It had taken Connie several years to get to that stage. "All right, but I'll be right outside the door. Call and I'll help you back to bed." "I will." Matt reluctantly left the room, the dull throb in his left side fading as he moved farther away. He was at the door when she gasped behind him. Turning, he looked at her. "You sure you want me to go?" She didn't say anything, just nodded. He shook his head at her stubbornness and stepped into the bedroom, pulling the bathroom door closed behind him. "You still here?" He mentally called out to JV as he reached for the shirt he had on when he arrived. "Matt?" "No, I'm at home. Alex's mom should still be there though." "What's her name?" "I forgot to ask this morning." "Jolene Parsons." "Thanks. Alex is awake and I'm gonna ask for food. I'll be in touch." "No problem, try to get some rest while you're at it." "We'll see." He buttoned his shirt and wondered what was taking Alex so long. "Mrs. Parsons?" He sent out on a wide channel, hoping she'd hear him. Yes. Her response was tentative, as if she didn't know who was calling out to her. He realized she probably didn't. Narrowing his response down to the path he'd received her reply on, he continued. This is Matt, Alex is awake. Is there any way we can get something for her to eat? Of course, I'll bring something right up. Her tone changed to one of surprise and pleasure. He was sure they only had a few minutes before she would be at the door. You about ready? He called through the door. Yeah. Alex's voice was breathy and threaded with pain. Shaking his head, he pushed the door open and went to her. Her face was lined and thin with the pain, but that eased as he got close enough that he could take the burden from her. Why didn't you say something? You could have just sent me a thought, and I'd have been right here. He wrapped one arm around her waist and walked her back to the bed. I don't want to be a burden. She sat on the edge of the bed. Matt piled the pillows against the headboard, then helped her sit, leaning back against them. You're hurt. Hurt bad. Taking the pain is a small thing. I can't heal you, I can't go back and stop this from happening. It's a small thing, let me do it. He pulled the blankets up over her legs before reaching for his jeans and pulling them on. Your mom will be up any minute now with food, he said at her confused look. When? Her frown deepened. He tapped his temple with one hand. While you were in the bathroom. I've learned to use my talents when I should. He smiled and sat on the bed near her knees. Alex shook her head, then looked down at her hands. Her face turned pink. Can you get me a t-shirt? Something to cover up with? A t-shirt probably isn't the best idea. It will require you to lift your arms over your head, and that will pull at your wounds. How about a blouse? Sure, they're in the closet. She pointed to the sliding doors to one side of the bed. Matt pulled out the first one he came across, acutely aware that he was on the edge of his ability to take her pain, then went back to her. Here's your choice, we can try to put it on you right, or you can wear it backwards like a hospital gown. Backwards will look funny, but it will be easier to get into. She looked at him for just a second. Backwards. He helped her get it on, tucking the tail under the blankets, as a knock sounded on the bedroom door. You decent in there? A woman's voice called. We are, Matt called back. The door opened, and Alex's mother appeared carrying a tray. Matt stood to get out of her way, then noticed she wasn't alone. There was a tall man with her. He looked to be in his mid-50s, and had the same nose and mouth as Alex. His hair had once been dark but was now salted with gray. You must be Mr. Parsons. Matt took a step toward him and extended his hand. He was careful not to get too far from Alex, but was doubly glad he'd put his jeans on. I'm Matthew Walker. I heard about you. Mr. Walker narrowed his eyes at him, but shook his hand after a moment. It's nice to meet you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Me too, sir. Me too. As one, they both turned to look at Alex sitting on the bed, the tray now across her lap. She was busy shoveling in scrambled eggs, sausage, and hash browns. At the rate she was going, Matt wasn't sure the huge portions would be enough. Here, let me move around this side. He left the wide side of the bed, where the chair Mrs. Parsons had been in earlier sat, for them. Instead, he went around and sat on the other side of the bed, sliding across to be closer to Alex. How are you this morning, baby? Mrs. Parsons asked, concern apparent on her face. Starving, Alex said between bites. Her parents frowned, realizing something wasn't quite right. But her father didn't seem to know how to say it. She's not feeling her wounds this morning. Matt saved them from having to ask. She probably wouldn't be awake yet if she did. Mrs. Parsons' mouth formed a silent O, and her eyes went to Matt for just a moment before going back to Alex. How? Mr. Parsons was obviously puzzled. They said she was hurt badly and it would take her days to heal. She was, and it will, Matt said. Even with my sister doing everything she can, it's going to take Alex several days to heal the damage from her. He shot a look at Alex. Encounter. I knew she needed to eat to fuel her healing, so I'm dealing with the effects of the wound. You're dealing with the effects? Mr. Parsons didn't seem to understand. He looked at Matt, then his wife for an explanation. He's bearing her pain for her, Randy. It's a fairly rare talent. Mrs. Parsons patted her husband on the leg. You can really do that? He looked at Matt with wide eyes. I can. I feel an echo of hers, and when it flares I feel that too. We need to keep her as still as possible, so she can heal. Because even though she won't feel it, she can tear the wounds open and prolong her recovery. Matt watched as Alex continued to inhale the shrinking mountain of food in front of her. But if she was actually feeling how badly her body hurt, she wouldn't be able to eat enough to supply the energy it needs to heal. I'll understand if he needs a break, but I'll be content to let him stay glued to my side for the next week or two. Alex said between bites. She took another and waited while she chewed and swallowed. We can discuss him going home after that. She took another bite. Everyone seemed content to wait while she ate. How did you get here so fast, by the way? She turned to look at Matt. I drove, he said. Alex gave him a long blink. You drove? From Denver? It didn't seem to be a question. Yeah. I looked at flying first, but the earliest I could land in Phoenix was 7. Considering the drive from there, it was faster for me to just drive it myself. He shrugged one shoulder. When's the last time you slept, young man? Mr. Parsons asked. I was sleeping when I felt Alex wake. You had only been here a little over an hour when you pathed me. Alex's mother put in. So? Matt looked back and forth between the two of them. Before your nap this morning, when's the last time you slept? I got up at 4 yesterday because I had a conference call at 5. He didn't see the point in evading any longer. He would just keep at it until they got an answer. Alex's father frowned at him but let the subject drop. So tell me more about this you feel her pain thing. Her father watched him, waiting for an answer. Well, I'm not sure what to tell you. What you want to know? He turned to Alex. How much can I tell him? How much do I withhold for security? We don't hide any part of our world from him. Answer honestly and give him as much info as he wants. The only reason he doesn't know already is we've never encountered anyone with this ability. She went back to eating. Matt explained his talent. He told her father that while it wasn't an automatic thing, he had to make an effort to drain pain from someone, it still worked while he slept. He also explained the proximity issue, and how he would have to stay very close to his daughter for it to work. The man was silent for a moment, watching the two of them. And the two of you are mates, like Jolene and I? Kind of, Daddy, but it's not quite the same. Alex had cleared her plate and emptied the large glass of orange juice on the tray. She pushed it away slightly and leaned back against the pillows piled behind her. How? Explain it to me. We're potential mates, Daddy. You remember when you and Mom were dating? How you were drawn to each other, but you still had the choice to not be together? That's where we are right now. We're not bound, we're still figuring out if it will work for us. Randy looked back and forth between the two of them for a moment. He wouldn't have dropped everything and driven for 10 hours if he didn't already feel a hell of a lot for you. The same goes for bearing the level of hurt you must be feeling from your wounds. That's not something a man does lightly. Smaller injuries, sure. But from what the con told me, if I had an injury like yours, I probably wouldn't survive." He closed his eyes and shook his head slowly for a moment, as if trying to shake something from his mind. "Even for someone who heals like you guys do, it's a serious injury, and I know you were in serious pain. You don't voluntarily take that on lightly." Matt looked away, avoiding Alex and both her parents. It was uncomfortable having someone you'd barely met see you so clearly. He felt a hand on his. Without looking, he knew it was Alex's. "That's okay, Daddy. I'm pretty gone on him too." After eating, Alex had quickly become tired again, so her parents left them alone. Matt helped her lay back down, then undressed and climbed back in with her. He was every bit as tired as she was, and knew if he didn't get some real rest soon, he'd be of no use to anyone. Careful not to hurt her wounds, they lay together and drifted off to sleep. When Matt woke, the room was dim. He wasn't sure if it was because of thick curtains or they had just slept that long. "You're awake," Alex said beside him, letting him know she was awake too. "Yeah." He yawned. "Any idea what time it is?" "Almost 4. She nodded at something behind him. He rolled away from her and found a clock sitting on the dresser. "You been awake long?" He rolled back toward her. "Just a few minutes." "Who's downstairs?" "What makes you think we're not alone?" "Neither your mom or JV would allow it. They'll want someone close by who can bring you food." "You could get food." "I'd have to leave you to do that, none of us want that." He gave her a sleepy smile as he slid one hand along her belly and pulled her against him. "Not for a few days yet." "I'll give you that one." She gave him a lopsided smile. "But I'm still not sure there's anyone downstairs." "How hungry are you?" "I'm hungry." "That's not what I asked." He pushed himself into a seated position. "I asked how hungry you are." "Not as bad as this morning, but still pretty hungry." "Why?" "Hang on a sec." He lifted her hand and kissed the back. "You here?" He sent to JV. "No, and I'm busy, I can't come for a while." "Bobby should be there." Her mental voice sounded rushed and distracted. He wondered what was going on, but didn't ask. He didn't want to distract her, and he had what he needed. "Bobby man, you at Alex's place?" "Yeah, I'm in the living room, what's up?" "How long till we can get some food? We're both pretty hungry, and I don't want to leave her." "I don't have anything ready, it's gonna take me a half hour or 45 minutes to cook something." "That's fine. It will give me a chance to check her wounds." "I'll get started and let you know when I start up the stairs." "Sounds good." Matt turned back to Alex. "It's gonna be a while before food's ready. While we wait, I want to change your bandage and get a look at your wounds." "Shouldn't we wait for JV? So she can help repair the damage a little more?" "She's busy." He shook his head. "I don't know how long she's gonna be, and I want to see it. I need to." He met her gaze and hoped she'd understand it was more than a want to see her wound that drove him. He needed to see it. Needed to see how close he'd come to losing another person who'd become so dear to him. She looked at him a moment, then sighed. "All right, help me up." After helping her to her feet, he carefully unwound the ace bandage wrapped around her middle, then gently pulled away the large gauze pad covering the left side of her ribs, right under her breast. It looked like 4 large claws had raked right across her ribs. The bones were no longer visible, but the wounds were still deep. Matt looked close. The skin was pink and healthy, not red or inflamed. It was healing well, but it would take time. "It looks good. Do you want to see?" He looked up at her. Alex hesitated. "Yeah, I better. There's a hand mirror on that table right there." Matt got the mirror and handed it to her, then started looking for bandage materials while she inspected the wound. A sharp jab in his side made him turn back to her. "Stop poking at it." "Sorry, it's just weird to see it and know it's on my body, but not be able to feel it." "You can feel it. You just can't feel the pain of the wound or poking at it. It's not numb." She looked at him a moment, surprise clear on her face. She ran one finger across an uncut piece of skin between two gashes. "You're right." She looked back at him, her eyes wide. "It's not numb, it just doesn't hurt." She frowned as he turned away. "What are you looking for?" "Bandages, we need to cover it back up so nothing gets in there and impedes healing." "There." She pointed at a toolbox on the floor next to the bathroom door. "Where?" He looked at her, confused. "That box, it's the first aid kit." Matt frowned for a minute, then grabbed the box and went back to her. Flipping it open, he sat in the chair beside the bed, so he could reach inside Kit, and her wound was at eye level. "Before I cover it back up, turn." "What?" "Turn around." He spun one finger in the air. She spun slowly and he looked her over for other injuries. There were several smaller cuts and claw marks, a few scrapes, and a lot of bruises. It had been one hell of a fight. He pulled a tube of Neosporin from the first aid kit and started dabbing it on her wounds. "Do you know why I'm doing this?" he asked, trying to distract her while he worked. "No." "So they don't scab over. We want the wounds themselves to stay moist as they heal, and not get dry or crack." When he was done, he took out another wound dressing pad, opened the sterile packaging, and placed it against the claw marks. "Can you hold this here? It should stick some, but I don't want to risk it falling." She put her hand on the pad, holding it in place, while he grabbed the bandages he'd taken off earlier. He carefully wound them back around her, glad these had the Velcro ends instead of the little metal claw tabs he'd grown up with. He didn't want to think about more claws in her soft skin. After finishing with the bandage, he helped her into the bathroom where she still wouldn't let him stay, then back to bed. He did think ahead enough to put her shirt on her before they got her in bed. This time it was on right and buttoned. He'd pulled on his jeans but left his shirt off and sat in the chair beside the bed watching her when he heard Bobby's voice in his head. "I'm on my way up. Just come on in, we're decent." He sent back. "Food's almost here," he said to Alex. She sat up a little straighter and wiggled her hips back on the bed so she would be ready for the tray. The door swung open and Bobby appeared carrying a large tray with 2 plates. "It's not fancy, but it's edible, and there's plenty of it." He handed the tray to Matt, then took one plate and set of silverware off before Matt could turn to put the tray in front of Alex. When Matt turned back, Bobby handed him the second plate. It was covered with a mound of fried potatoes, a large grilled steak, and pile of steamed broccoli. "Sit, eat." Bobby motioned him back to the chair where he'd been. Bobby moved to the foot of the bed and sat on the edge. Something deep in Matt stirred. He didn't like another man sitting on the bed where Alex lay nearly naked, but he knew he wasn't touching her, and there was nowhere else for him to sit. He pushed away the unreasonable feeling. He looked at the other man and wondered. "What's up with my sister? She sounded distracted when I pathed her earlier." He started eating while he waited for the other man to answer. "The Karen has gone into preterm labor. JV got it stopped, but they've got her on bed rest, and your sister is keeping close in case it starts again." "Oh no," Alex said between bites. "It's way too early, she's got another 2 months. That's why JV stopped it. From what I hear, she wasn't sure she'd be able to at first, but she managed. Steve said it took a lot out of her." Bobby shrugged as if he wasn't sure. Matt nodded, understanding now why she'd seemed stressed. So tell me exactly how it is that Alex went out with you and my brother-in-law after this bear, and she's the one who ended fighting it, and is the only one hurt. What happened to the bear? Alex asked, as if it had suddenly occurred to her. Steve killed it. Bobby answered Alex first. I know that, but you were dressing it out. What happened to the meat? The con offered it to your folks, but your dad turned it down, so it went in the freezer at the ranch. Why? He got his share of me, I want my pound of his flesh. She grinned as she cut into her steak and took a bite. Matt could only shake his head and smile. Somehow, her desire to get even with the bear that hurt her by eating him only amused him. I'll tell the con once things calm down with his mate. I'm sure he won't mind. Bobby turned to Matt. They were in cat form, but I stayed human and followed with my rifle. I didn't see what started it or why it was her, but once I got there, I couldn't get a clean shot. As soon as he could be sure he wouldn't get her instead, the Shaku jumped in and killed the bear. By then she was already injured. Matt and Bobby both looked to Alex to see if she could fill in the gaps. She had a mouthful but waved her fork in the air. Once she swallowed, she spoke. Let me eat, then I'll fill you in. When she was through eating, she pushed the tray down her legs and told them about the hunt from her point of view. It wasn't really his fault. I surprised him when I jumped off the ledge. I feel kind of guilty we had to kill him. At the same time, I want my pound of flesh back. She laughed. Matt flinched as her laughter sent a bolt of pain through his ribs. It wasn't extremely painful, just sudden, and it had surprised him. But tell me more about Rebecca. How is she? Alex looked at Bobby. Fine, as far as I know. They would have let me know if they needed me. They got the labor stopped. She and the baby are fine last I heard. He gathered the empty dishes and took them to the kitchen, leaving them alone again. How are you feeling? Matt asked, his head dropped back to rest on the back of the chair as he watched her. Fine. She drew the word out as she glanced around the room as if suspicious. Well enough to shift? He lifted one brow, challenging her. She hesitated for a second. I could shift, why? It would help you heal some. It won't magically make it all better, but it will magically add a day or two's healing. But you just redid the bandage. So I'll do it again. He didn't understand what the big deal was. It's a waste. You could have had me shift while the bandage was off. You hadn't eaten yet then. He thought he was being logical. You could have waited until after I'd eaten to change the bandage then. Matt suddenly understood that she didn't realize he hadn't just been changing her dressing. He got up and sat on the bed beside her. Baby. He pulled her hand up to cup between his. It wasn't that your dressing needed to be changed earlier. She frowned and her head tilted to one side. Then why? I had to see it. It was killing me not to know how bad it was. Not seeing how close I came to losing you before I had a chance to tell you how much you've come to mean to me. He looked down at their hands. This was hard to say, and he wasn't sure he could say it while watching her. While I can't honestly say I love you, you have come to mean a great deal to me, and I'm sure given a little more time, I could love you very much. Though unable to meet her gaze while he bared his soul, he couldn't resist watching for her reaction. Her eyes filled and a single tear ran down her face. I hated getting on the plane and leaving you behind. I know we don't know each other very well, and I know it's foolish to be so attached so soon, but I've missed you terribly. I kept telling myself I would see you soon, but I never imagined it would be this soon. Well, since you won't be leaving this bed for more than to use the bathroom for the next few days. And I'll be staying close, we'll have plenty of time to get to know each other. Oh no. I can't keep you from your work. I like having you close and I'm grateful for all your help, but I can't expect you to spend all your time here. Matt smiled, then reached up and brushed away her tear with his thumb. You didn't ask, and I know you don't expect it. Before I left, I cleared my schedule for the rest of the month. You're stuck with me, baby. Her eyes filled again and overflowed. She didn't bother to wipe them away. You're so sweet. Matt didn't know how to respond to that, so he changed the subject. Since you don't want to waste a bandage, I'll let you wait to shift until morning. But I'm trying to come up with a suitable trade-off. He pulled his mouth to one side and pretended to think about it. I'm thinking you could buy me off with sexual favors. Alex laughed, which had been his goal. Yeah, right. She pushed at him. Other than getting in bed with me this morning, and I know that was to help me, you've been careful to keep things slow between us. So, somehow I don't think you'd go from a couple kisses ever to my being able to buy you off with sexual favors. I don't know. He shook his head slowly. I think you underestimate the desperation of a lonely widower. Now you're making me feel bad. Don't. It wasn't something I thought much about until very recently. Still. She stuck her lower lip out. Let's talk about something else. Tell me about your ranch. How many head of cattle do you run? They talked for a couple hours, taking turns asking each other questions until Alex yawned and Matt called an end to the evening. He helped her get ready for bed, then climbed in and curled around her, protecting her from further harm.